half the season down, half the season to go. It is time to break it down. We are coming up close on the trade deadline, and there's a whole lot to talk about. How are the Cubs doing? How are they going to look the second half? And what are they going to do at the trade deadline? Are they going to be buyers or sellers? The Wrigleyville South podcast with myself, Chad, and my brother, Evan, is coming back right after this. Care how many times I watch that. I get goosebumps every time. It's too much fun to watch some of those epic historic moments, including some that are very, very recent, that World Series victory. Welcome to the Wrigleyville South podcast. I am Chad, and you see across from me, you see my brother. This is Evan. He's down there in Mexico. He is very Wrigleyville South.
Deep south. Super south,
yeah, down in Mexico, south of the border. But Evan, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. A lot of the folks who've been tuning into the podcast here have heard my thoughts already on as this season has gone on with the Cubs. But what are your impressions of this little rebuild, retool over the last couple of years, and what they've been able to manage thus far, and kind of what you expect?
I love it. I love the fresh feeling. I love I don't know, it just doesn't have that like veteran kind of bought team. It's got more of the pulling people up, kind of a rookie feeling, similar to the 2015 rebuild and all that just kind of bringing up players that maybe weren't the big names and everything like that. We just sold all the people that were the famous World Series winners and everything. And it's like, okay, now we're gonna try to win this with that Patrick Wisdom guy and with that with
like
this
Frank Schwindel last year, and it was
and it's like and I've been loving it. Look, my baby boy was born on April 18th of last year, and his name is Juan Diego, okay, which Juan Diego means wisdom.
Oh, there you go.
So I was I'll just let you guys look it up. Look up those 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks of my baby boy's life, and you are gonna see wisdom just he went on a doubles like streak where he was just like hitting a double almost every time. Well, that's ridiculous, but he was hitting a lot of doubles. Hitting like a double every game or something like that. It was crazy, and I was just like all about. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a big change when now your heroes are the guys that were on the bench.
Not even on the bench. They were in the minors.
Weren't even on the bench.
Yeah, they weren't even. Yeah, they might not have even been on the. They might not have even been like in the farm system yet, because Patrick Wisdom, the Cubs claimed him. The Cardinals let him go, and he was just kind of bouncing around and wasn't even sure if he was going to land on a roster, and the Cubs just took a chance at him. And I mean, he's struggling a little bit this year, but he's got tremendous power in his bat, and so so
that's my impression. I've been loving seeing just all these players, Swanson or what's Samsonite, Swanson. Sorry, you don't get that joke?
Dansby
Dumb and
Swanson?
Dumber? Dumb and
Oh,
Dumber. They're looking up her name. You're like,
yeah.
oh, come on. Maybe it's on her suitcase. And he had just figured out Sweeney, Swanson. Oh, Samsonite. Man, I wasn't even close.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, I did get. Well, the reason why it confused me a little bit is because I was thinking of Adrian Sampson. I was like, no, man, he had an okay year last year, but he struggled in spring training and lost the job to Hayden Wesneski for that 5th starter spot before Kyle Hendricks came back. But let's talk about that. So you talked about all the big names, Javi Baez, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Wilson Contreras now on the Cardinals in the Cardinals lineup, although he's struggling mightily, not at the plate, but as a catcher, which is something that Cubs fans could have told you about Cardinals fans and John Mozeliak. We could have told you that buyer beware. Wilson Contreras, not a great handler of a pitching staff or framer of strikes, and but signal caller. But he's over there. So you got all those guys. The one guy who's left, and you talked about like the 2014, 2015. Kyle Hendricks, he was part of that. Well, no, but Ian Happ was not on the World Series team.
Right. He was the year after, right?
Yeah, he came up in 2017.
He hit a home run in his first.
Got drafted. Yeah, he got drafted in 2015 or 16. But anyway, my point is that Kyle Hendricks on that 2014 team, that's when he first burst onto the scene, really. And then he was a big part of 2015 and 2016, obviously. But now he's like the last vestige of that whole crew. He's the only guy still on the roster who was on the roster back in 2014. Who saw, I mean, that team in 2014 lost 100 games. And then the next year, 2015, they win 97 games. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I've made this comparison. This team right now, this incarnation, 2023, reminds me a lot of that 2015. And it's a little bit of both, because I think 2014 was more like what last year was for the Cubs, where it was like the team was awful, but you had a lot of young guys, and you saw some stuff. Nico Horner, you saw some guys with potential. Well, you saw the same thing in 2014 with the Cubs, where you had, Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez had a little bit of a sprinkle, and you saw some little pieces that were starting to show. And you had Kyle Hendricks, Jake Arrieta had his first full season with the Cubs, and had a pretty good year, and that's why he was picked going into 2015 as a Cy Young candidate, and then ended up winning the Cy Young with the best second half in the history of pitching for any major league pitcher. And I see some similar things. I see some threads that look very similar to that. There's obviously some big differences, but look at Justin Steele and how he's playing. Look at how Marcus Stroman is pitching. He was until he ran into that little wall with the blister in London. He was on pace to possibly make a run at Jake Arrieta with how well he was pitching. Had 7 consecutive starts that were just incredible. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, there's so many different ways that you could go with this. Either you come into this second half, Cubs are 42-47, 5 games under 500, and 7 games out of first, 6.5 games out of the wild card. A lot of signals there that say, okay, you're close, you're not far away. And I wonder, if the Cubs had won 53 games at this point and they were 7 games back, if we would maybe be thinking oh, it's worth making a run at this and going and buying at the trade deadline. But when you're that far under 500 and you're that far out of the wild card and you're 7 games out of first, and you look at Marcus Stroman can opt out of his contract after this year. Cody Bellinger has a $25 million club or player option. He's not going to take that. He's going to go try the market. He's going to see what he can get. And it's just going to be, I think that this is one of those very critical stretches where over the next 2 weeks, if the Cubs don't win 10 games, out of their next 15, I see them selling. And if they lose 10 games out of the next 15, they're definitely selling. And I, for one, as much as I'm excited about the way that this team is playing, and I get some real good vibes, and it's got a kind of a feel good Cubs roster, I am of the opinion that I don't care what they do in the next 2 weeks. I think you trade Marcus Stroman. I think you trade Cody Bellinger. I think you trade Yan Gomes. You at least you dangle them out there and see what you can get, because those guys aren't coming back next year. Unless like it's a very, very outside possibility that any of those guys comes back next year. And if that's the case, you got to get something for them and not just let them go. The last thing you want to do is not make the playoffs this year, and you've got Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman sitting on your roster collecting dust before they go play for somebody else anyway, and you got nothing back for them. It's very similar to what the Cubs went through with Javi, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and those guys. And I go back and I look. So I pulled it up. Here's what the Cubs got for Javi Baez. Pete Crow Armstrong. All right, so let's do this real quick. You want to see where Pete Crow Armstrong ranks in the Cubs prospect list? Number 1. So the number 1 prospect in the Cubs farm system right now is a guy they got when people didn't want the Cubs to let go of Javi Baez. Look at how Javi Baez has performed since he left the Cubs. And you tell me whether it was worth hanging on to him for another couple of months for him to only become a free agent anyway, or would you rather have Pete Crow Armstrong waiting in the wings to take Cody Bellinger's spot next year or maybe the year after? But I really think PCA is going to be the Cubs starting center fielder next year. Chris Bryant, Cubs got Alexander Canario and Caleb Killian. Can you find those guys' names on this list? Oh, wait, there's Alexander Canario as the number 10 overall Cubs prospect. And where's Caleb Killian? Let's scroll down just a tiny bit. There he is. He is number 17 on the list. So this is what you potentially are looking at. Continuing to fill the coffers of that minor league system and boosting your future, because the future is very, very bright. You just signed Dansby Swanson to a long contract. You signed Ian Happ to an extension. You signed Nico Horner to an extension. You've got this really nice core group of guys that are already there. You've got Seiya Suzuki for another 3 years after this year. You've got Nelson Velasquez. You've got all these other guys in the minors that are coming up, and Justin Steele's going to be around for a while. You've got some pieces that are there. Then I look at, all right, what did they get for Anthony Rizzo? Kevin Alcantara and Alexander Vizcaino. Now, Alexander Vizcaino is not on this list, but I'll show you where Kevin Alcantara is. There he is, number 4. And then when you go to some of the other guys like Drew Smiley, even Kyle Hendricks, Michael Fulmer for sure, because he's a free agent after this year, you try to see what you can get for those guys. Do you remember who the Cubs got for Andrew Chafin? Daniel Palencia and Greg Dykman. Now, where is Daniel Palencia on this list? Let's see. Where is he? Oh, there he is, number 13 on the Cubs prospect list. So again, I'm just saying these are some very real examples of what you are capable of pulling off.
So this top 20 basically came straight from the trade.
I mean, there's a lot of really good draft picks in there, Cade Horton and some other guys. But yeah, I mean, the other one that I didn't even mention that's on there is hang on, let me pull it back up again, is Ben Brown. He's I think he's the number 2 guy on the list, 2 or 3. 3. He's number 3. He's the starting pitcher that the Cubs got for the David Robertson trade when they sent him to the Phillies. So and then you got Nick Madrigal and Cody Heyer for Craig Kimbrell from the White Sox. And I mean, I hated Cody Heyer, like first, Tommy John surgery at the beginning of last year. He's finally battling his way back. He's about to get called up, and then his elbow explodes. And I've never seen somebody. Did you see that video? Did I send you that? I don't think I did. But he's throwing he was hitting like 99, 100 miles an hour on the gun, and he goes to throw, and like the ball sails over the batter's head. It was a right-handed hitter. sails over the guy's head, and then you see him start jumping around. He's holding his elbow, and then come to find out, he broke his elbow while he was throwing that pitch. Like his arm broke at the elbow, and so it's like he's gonna be out for a while. I hate that, but that's not. You can't grade the trade based on that. Like the dude was a really good late inning, high leverage reliever. And Nick Madrigal, although he doesn't have a whole lot of pop, he's got great bat to ball skills, great contact skills, and he's been doing things very well. He's a great bench fill-in piece. He can play third. He can play a little short. He can play second. So
I'd like to say something. Actually, like two things. First, look at this little ring we got here. The World Series ring.
Yes, indeed.
Now, if you look close, what do you see? You see it's missing all the little blue gems because it's falling off of my thing every time my daughter Ivana decides that she wants to play with it.
Yeah.
And so it's not, but it kind of reminds me of we've had to lose some of those pieces from that team that won that.
Yeah,
but it doesn't really matter because I don't want another one of this ring. I want a new ring.
Yeah, that's right.
I want a new ring, and I want a new ring with new jewels in it. and I think that what I'm seeing right now with the offense, especially since what was it, 3 weeks ago when Ross made all the changes with the lineup, that it just blew up. It was just like I don't even know exactly what the thought process was behind it. But there was just some tweaking, and it was just like all of a sudden we went on this run where we got like 9 games out of 10 or something like that. I don't know. It's just
they did. They won. Yeah, they won 9 out of 10. Yeah, they won 9
until we
out
went
of 10.
to London, I think, where things, and then we had some harder teams that we had to play against after that. Whatever. But I'm looking at it. I'm like, I see these names on the roster, and I'm as excited when Horner pops up as batter on deck as I was when I saw Baez or whatever. It's like the feeling of that team, of this Mr. Nobodies, of Schwarber and Baez and all these guys, these nobodies that are all of a sudden somebodies, not because they're winning all kinds of games, but because just the offense is beautiful. And I think what would scare me the most about all these trade prospects and everything is not Bellinger, because I think the offense is a great option. Everything that we got going on with the offense has a lot of potential. What worries me the most is the pitching, because we're going to need to do something to make sure that we're not going in next year with.
Okay, so that's the next part of it, right? All right, so you have a few different things that you have to compartmentalize with this for me. And let me, before I get into that, let me first, I think when you say nobodies, when you were talking about Baez and Schwarber, what you meant was like guys who
upcoming stars,
guys who haven't already, established themselves at the major league level. They weren't nobodies.
It's not a
Kyle
Yankees
Schwarber
or a Dodgers guy
pick.
that grabbed 5 guys off the last World Series winning team.
Right, exactly.
Said, we'll have them, please.
We're gonna have Max Scherzer and Trey Turner and all the I know what you mean. Mookie Betts.
Hendricks came out of nowhere. I mean, he came out of somewhere. But he was a guy who they got. So they made that trade. It was Ryan Dempster at the deadline in, I want to say 2012. The Rangers needed a pitcher, and the Cubs sent them Ryan Dempster and got Kyle Hendricks and Carl Edwards Jr. out of that trade. And it wasn't it wasn't a whole lot. Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of fanfare around that. Well, like if you remember, so the best one was it Mike Clevenger or Steve Clevenger? I don't remember. One of the Clevenger boys, a pitcher for the Cubs, or I'm not a pitcher, catcher for the Cubs. They sent him to the Orioles for Jake Arrieta and Pedro Strop. Now, mind you, Jake Arrieta was terrible. Yeah, Jake Arrieta was terrible. Pedro Strop was a solid, middle reliever type arm who need a little work. Yeah, I know, right? But Jake Arrieta was terrible. He had like a 5+ ERA. He was walking tons of people. He ended up being pretty good with the Cubs, right?
Yeah, well, what it was, the Orioles tried to fix his crossfire delivery because he would stand over off to the right side of the rubber, and he would plant his plant leg like off to the right, and he'd come across his body to the left, and they tried to correct that, and it was actually worse. So the Cubs, when he got to the Cubs, they were just like, "Nah, man, if you're more comfortable
Do it
like
the
that,
way you like it.
do it the way you're more comfortable." And it actually became like his calling card. It
Right.
made his cutter and his slider and his sinker more deadly, and he, the rest is history. So, but there are a lot of little things like that. I was just looking. The Cubs traded Scott Efros to the Yankees for Hayden Wesneski, and I'm just looking at all these guys where I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that you look at Mike Fulmer. It seems like, oh well, you're not going to get anything for him. Like, okay, you're not going to get anything out of him that means anything the rest of this year anyway. Really, like unless this team wins 10 out of the next 15, I don't see a reason why you don't sell. Like, because if you win 10 out of 15 and you get to where you're 2-3 games out of first place in the Central, and you're 3 or 4 games out of the wild card, you still have a lot of heavy lifting to do the rest of the year just to make the playoffs. So you better be damn well sure that it's worth hanging on to Michael Fulmer, or is it more worth your money to go get, I don't care who it is, some minor league guy or whatever? Because the thing is, and this is where we transition to the next phase of this. So like we've evaluated like where the Cubs are this season, how exciting that has been, and the kind of the vibes and the feel that it gives us, and that there is a chance that this team could make the playoffs. Yeah, sure. But then being realistic,
Which might be the most dangerous part.
Yeah, being right, exactly. Well, that was how I felt about 2021 when the Cubs no-hit the Dodgers in that it was like a combined no-hitter, and then they lost like 10 out of 14. I was like, thank God. Thank God.
Because they were going to try to make a run for it.
Keep Rizzo and Baez and Bryant, and we wouldn't have gotten. Imagine that team doesn't lose 10 out of 14 until after the deadline. They wait until after the deadline. You've hung on to all those guys. Then they go into the tank, and you don't make the playoffs. There's no Pete Crow Armstrong. There's no Alexander Canario. There's no Caleb Killian. There's no Kevin Alcantara. There's no Daniel
Palencia. 20 names on the list, you have to scratch out 15 of them.
Yeah, there's no Nick Madrigal, Cody Heyer. Like you just scratch like half of the Cubs' top 15 prospects. Scratch them off the list. And you still end up not having Craig Kimbrell, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Anthony Rizzo, and who else did they? Oh, Andrew Chafin, Craig Kimbrell. Did I already say Craig Kimbrell? Anyway, you still don't have any of those guys come 2022.
Look, for once in our lifetime, we've been able to hang this W flag, not just to mean win, but to mean World Series.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so I'm willing to sacrifice a few of these white flags this year.
That's right.
So that I can get a gold one with a big World Series logo on it. I mean, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. I'm excited about the team, and I like I just like the spunk or the spark or the I feel that. I love it. And these guys are out there, not necessarily that they have something to prove, but that they're just playing. They're having fun. I love it. I mean, it's not the star that already thinks that he's like bigger than life and kind of showboating that. It's a bunch of guys that are like, hey, we can play. We can do this.
Right.
And I'm getting that feeling. The past 3 weeks, I've gotten that feeling more than ever. But at the same time, ever since London and what's going on since then, which hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been. It's not the feeling that I had right before that.
Right.
But I think that there's some pieces that could be put into place that can bring this potential into reality. But there are pieces missing. So you're gonna need to make some sacrifices to keep building it until you've got the whole thing ready to go. before you make a run for the playoffs. I mean, I'd be, I don't know, man. If they do what you said and they win 10 games out of 15, they might be proving that if we start the second half from 3 weeks ago, imagining that being the second half.
Which is more realistically the second half, because we're at 89 games in. Well, the second half really was 8 games ago. It started.
Well, then forget how far under 500 are. Look at how much above 500 they would be with the streak that they had and the streak that they could have. If you put these 2 months together, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, this month and a half together, you might say like, well, hey, this team, if we need to just buy a few of the pieces that are missing, and this team could be that now, okay. But I don't see that. I don't see them winning the 10 games out of 15 right now. And even if they did, I don't trust it having what they need to buy. I don't trust it to sustain.
Right. Well, and the other part we haven't talked about,
to fill in the blanks.
Right. The other part that we haven't talked about is, like, let's just say hypothetically, the Cubs become buyers at the deadline, or they stand pat. They don't buy or sell, or they can't. That
would be the worst. I think that would be the worst.
Right. Absolutely, it would. But let's just say, like, hypothetically speaking, this is the roster for the rest of the season. Okay. And this team finds a way to squeak into the playoffs. There's no way this team's winning the World Series.
No.
They don't have the top end pitching. They don't have the thump in the middle of the lineup. They just don't have it. I'm being completely realistic as a Cubs fan that this is not a World Series contender team. And I don't think that they can without completely sacrificing the future of the franchise, they can't make the additions at the trade deadline to become a World Series contender.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm like, and here's the next part where we transition to the next compartment of this compartmentalization for me is, okay, you talked about, like, well, all right, well, let's say you get rid of Stroman, Smiley, and Hendricks. Let's say you get rid of all 3 of them. Okay. Let's say you get rid of Cody Bellinger and Yan Gomes. Let's say you get rid of even Trey Mancini and Michael Fulmer. Okay. You get rid of all those guys. All right. I'm just hypothetically speaking. All right. So who fills in those other starting spots? So you got Justin Steele, and you got you've gotten rid of Stroman, Smiley, and Hendricks. All right. So you've got Justin Steele, and then you're really left with, like, I don't know, Hayden Wesneski or and Jameson Tyone, right? Well, you've also got Javier Assad, who could step into a larger role. You could go down to the minors, call up Ben Brown. Maybe you bring Adrian Sampson back. You've got some guys at the minor league level,
and
even on the major league club.
Got that really good LSU pitcher that ended up going to the Cubs.
No, he's Alex Lang. He's the closer or he's a late inning reliever for the Tigers now.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it happens. But no, so there's.
I thought we had him, like, somewhere in there, because that's what happens. Like, I just watched LSU win the College World Series, and I'm like, yes. And then you're like, some of these guys, you're not going to see them again for like another 5 years before they actually, like, do anything. Or you're like, he was the number one. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. So all right. So here we go. Here's the. Let me pull this up.
Different from the NFL. The NFL, they go straight from being a star in college and then being a star or at least being on a professional.
Right.
NFL
all right. So if you go down to your AAA type guys and guys who could get the call up. You got Hayden Wesneski, Ben Brown. Oh yeah, Caleb Killian as well, possibly even Jordan Wicks. You've got some guys, you've got some arms that you could start giving an opportunity to get a little cup of coffee and see what they can provide for you down the stretch. And going to center field, if you get rid of Cody Bellinger and you get rid of Yan Gomes, you got Miguel Amaya. What?
Just imagine what it would be like to bring these new guys up and give them their cup of coffee and end up getting the playoffs.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I doubt that that's going to happen. But
no,
like,
but even if it did, I don't even care if they lose. But
even
just
if
what they're saying about the next year
right,
is unbelievable.
even if they just play well, it's a it's a good little shot in the arm. And I don't think you're just sacrificing everything if you get something for these guys at the deadline. Cody Bellinger, you lose him in center field. Well, Mike Tauchman's already been playing center field since when Bellinger was hurt, and he's already become like the leadoff man, whereas Nico Horner was holding that job down to start the season. I think Mike Tauchman has really stepped into that role well and allowed Nico Horner to slide into a more comfortable number 2 spot where he can hit for a little bit more power and he can try to drive the ball into the gaps and not necessarily be strictly an on-base guy who tries to get on and then steal bags. And then you've got Nelson Velasquez, and you've got all these other guys down. Owen Casey could possibly get a call up, and that's another one. Owen Casey is a guy that we often forget about, but he was part of that Yu Darvish trade in 2020 and everybody's like, oh, why are you trading Yu Darvish? Like, well, because you can get something really good for him. And they ended up getting Zach Davies and Owen Casey and some other stuff. And Owen Casey is like one of the, let's go back to the Cubs prospect list here, because that's going to be where we're going to see Owen Casey again. Let me pull this up again. So where's Owen Casey? Oh, there he is, number 12. Again, This is like guys who we have traded for who have stepped right in and become, big pieces of the puzzle. So looking at that, I see a path to some of these guys who haven't gotten their opportunities yet being able to step in, and nobody's going to be able to pound for pound, although he's very lightweight. He's only 5'7", replace Marcus Stroman. They're not going to be able to match him pitch for pitch and skill for skill, right? But they might surprise you. You might be able to get a nice little run where they can be 500 in their starts and have around a 3.50 to 4 ERA or whatever. There are people who can be plugged in. I would say if you're going to hang on to anybody, I wouldn't be opposed to hanging on to Kyle Hendricks, just because he would be able to kind of keep that thread and his veteran presence. And you could probably get him to stick around on a hometown deal, because I doubt he's going to be able to command a huge salary on the open market. He's getting up there in age, and you've already seen he's had some injuries the last few years, and his stuff isn't as dynamic as it used to be. His fastball's taken a couple of ticks off in velocity, and he's just not the same. He's still very effective, but I think it's hard to command a lot in the trade market for a guy who throws 87 miles an hour as a right-handed starting pitcher on his fastball. That's not that as effective as he is. Teams are looking to add guys who blow people away when they're going into their playoff run. Hendricks is a great guy to add, but he's more of like a guy who you want throughout the regular season, because he's going to eat innings and he's going to be effective and he's going to get ground balls and he's going to get outs. But in a playoff scenario, he might end up being relegated to a bullpen role or something like that, or like a long relief type situation. So I wouldn't be opposed to keeping him around. But the next phase that we go into, the next compartment of this compartmentalization that I'm talking about, is what do you do in the off season? Because as you start to let some of these pieces that are short term, guys who are going to be free agents after this year anyway, and you don't throw money away. And I say throw money away. I think it would be, what would you rather, Evan? Would you rather pay Marcus Stroman $25 million a year for the next 4 years to extend him, or maybe 5 years even is what it would probably take? So, 5 years, $125 million for Marcus Stroman to keep him around. His little 5'7", very effective, but he's only 5'7". It's hard to maintain that velocity and all that stuff in a little bitty body like that. And Cody Bellinger, who would probably cost $25 million a year as well. Would you rather have those two guys
$50 million
at $50 million combined for a center fielder with a really decent bat, an above average bat, and a starting pitcher who's like an all-star. Or here's what I have pitched to people.
What I've been waiting for.
Throw that back. You throw that back.
What do we get? What do we get for all the gold?
Shohei Ohtani, $50 million a year for 12 years.
He's the best hitter. Option?
He's the best hitter in baseball. He's a free agent after this year. I say give him $50 million for 12 years. $600 million contract, break the bank, throw all the money at him. He's the best hitter in baseball. He leads the majors in home runs. He bats like 300, hits the ball 500 feet. We've never seen anything like it. And oh, by the way, he's just as good of a pitcher as Marcus Stroman has been at his best this year.
And he's shown that he can maintain, he can sustain that.
Well, he's big. He's a big dude, and he throws like 100. Like he throws like mid 90s, to high 90s. And he's got like wicked stuff too. So I'm just throwing that out there. Like I have been waiting for, and I've been watching the Cubs very judiciously spend money because, quite honestly, there haven't been the guys who have really blown me away. And if you look at it, they're all the guys that got signed this offseason at shortstop. You had Xander Bogaerts, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa. There's somebody else whose name escapes me, and Dansby Swanson. The Cubs got by far the cheapest one and the one that flew the most under the radar, and he's been super productive, and he's a great clubhouse guy.
Yeah,
and he wants to be there. His wife lives in Chicago, plays soccer, although she blew her knee out or whatever. But she plays for the U.S. national team and all that. But I look at how the Cubs have like judiciously spent money, and then people complain about like the Jameson Taillon deal and all this stuff. It's like, well, yeah, but you're complaining about the Jameson Taillon deal, but then you want the Cubs to pony up and re-sign Marcus Stroman. Well, what if Marcus Stroman turns around and gives us a Jameson Taillon type year next year? And Taillon, what did he do in his last start? 8 innings, just shut down baseball, finally found himself, and like he's still got 3 more years left on that contract, and it might actually pay off, right? So I'm just looking at this like it's not just what are you letting go and what are you getting rid of and trying to hang. I think people try to hang on to. They're like, why would you get rid of Cody Bellinger? Look how good he's been. Like, because man, it's going to cost a lot to get him, and you can actually get something for him.
And I would insist that I think we need to focus more right now on the pitching than on the offense. I think, especially since the lineup tweaks that were made, I'm really happy about the offense. I don't see any big.
No, okay. They don't have what the Cubs need. If you look at the way that the Cubs have struggled in 1-run games the last 2 years, I think they're 12 and 22 in 1-run games. So some of that's luck. Sometimes, small margin of error stuff doesn't bounce your way or whatever, but it's also an indication of 2 things. One, it's an indication that you don't have the big bullpen arms to be able to finish teams off when you have a lead late. And you've seen that the Cubs have blown tons of saves. on the bullpen side. Yeah, on the bullpen side. But then the other part is like, why are we in so many 1-run games? It's because we can't extend leads and get away from people because we're not hitting the ball out of the ballpark and we're not hitting for slug. There's not enough thump and slug in this lineup.
Right. They're getting the base hits. You got guys who are dynamic. They're getting on base, but they're not able to turn that into runs as much.
Yeah.
As like.
Right. So like the runners in scoring position issue that we see sometimes where you'll load the bases with nobody out and it's like strikeout, pop up, strikeout, or strikeout, double play, and the inning's over. A lot of that stuff, it's real easy to like go back to it was funny because again to LSU, shout out to the Tigers.
Yeah, I was about to talk about LSU too.
In the College World Series, in the College World Series, there was a stretch where they were struggling really bad with, getting hits with runners in scoring position.
Yeah,
but then when you hit on base, right? But then when you hit a 2-run homer and a 3-run homer later in the game, you just kind of forget about that, But if you're not hitting the 2 and 3-run homers at other parts during the game, then you have to cash in on those other opportunities with runners in scoring position. And it's really hard to string together 4, 5, 6 hits. I know it's easy to be like, this is ridiculous. They loaded the bases and they didn't get any runs. It's like, yeah, but if you look at the inning, they batted 500 that inning, because they had to load the bases first,
Right.
So it's okay if you go like, get the first 2 guys out, and then they get the next 2 guys on and get the next guy out.
Pitcher,
right, to match up with the guy who.
I remember messaging Dad during the first game whenever they won in the 11th. I was like, man, we need more ribbies than wrists. I mean, it's not going to work that way. But it's just when you're facing really good pitching, that's baseball. That's it's a soccer game where you're like, why aren't they scoring goals? Because it's normal in a really good soccer game for it to be 0-0 for the majority of the game.
Well, not only that, but it's okay. So you load the bases with, on the starting pitcher, and then they bring in a reliever. What's his job? Is his job to just come in there and throw strikes? No, it's his job to not let you score. He was brought in, and his skill set is like they bring him in because he's a really good ground ball pitcher, and they want to get a double play. So like that's or if the starter's still in there, it's the second inning and you load the bases on him. His whole mindset and his strategy, where he's pitching, how he's pitching, is going to change. And there's some things that you can do to adjust at the plate. It frustrates me more than anything to watch in a situation like that, where it's like, okay, look, this guy's going to try to get you to roll over on a fastball or something low in the zone and get you to roll over and hit into a double play. So the best remedy to that is play up the middle and the other way. And it's just physics. The natural trajectory, because of the angle of the bat, is if you don't believe me, go look it up, Google this. If you're trying to hit the ball the other way, you're more likely to hit the ball in the air. When you hit the ball the opposite field, you're more likely to hit the ball in the air. Ground ball rate versus fly ball rate, opposite field, is much lower. Whereas when you try to pull the ball, when you pull the ball, that's going to create the most leverage you have, and it's a shorter porch. If you can pull it down the left field line, or if you're left-handed down the right field line, you're going to have more power potential because the fence is shorter, and you derive more power that way. However, you're also more likely, because of the angle of the bat, if you don't get under it, it's going to go straight down. It's going to hit off more likely to hit off the handle. So
let's say
all you have to do is have a different approach.
You're playing Mario Party using Bowser's die.
Right.
You've got 8, 9, and 10 at the end.
Right.
But the first ones are like -3, lose all your coins and stuff like that.
Right, right.
Okay, well, I've got a chance to maybe like crush it with a 10, but there's also a chance that I'll roll this thing 10 times and get negative numbers. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
Well, it's and if the pitcher's strategy is specifically to induce a ground ball, then the best way to counter that is to specifically try to induce a fly ball, not do the thing that is most likely to get the ground ball for the pitcher.
Hey, I got a weird question, out of left field. I have no idea. One of my biggest things about wanting to be on this podcast is to hear things like what you're proposing with Ohtani and all that. It's like, well, okay, we sell these guys, but make me want it. Give me something that I want more than what I already have.
Yeah.
So what about De La Cruz? Is he on the board or not?
Ellie De La Cruz from the Reds?
Yeah.
He's a rookie. And the Reds are in first place. What the hell would they? What? No, he's going to be
No,
a
I mean
pain in our ass
like
for the next 10 years, just like
okay.
Joey Votto.
Okay.
He's basically like he just the biggest thing you can hope for with him is that he's just like that Archimedes Aquino or whatever, that where he came Aquino or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
he came on to the and just like destroyed. He had like 11 home runs in his first 14 games or some BS, and he was just destroying everybody. And now you don't even hear about him anymore. That's the best thing you could hope for with Ellie De La Cruz, is that they find enough. Look, I'm old enough to remember.
I love you, guy. I'm happy about the way you play. I love watching you play.
Right. I love watching you play.
Do well. I
hope
you
do
don't
well.
do it against us.
Just don't do it against the Cubs. Yeah. But no, but I'm old enough to remember, the likes of Kevin Moss and, all these like little flash in the pan guys. Cub fans will remember Jerome Walton from back in the day. There's countless guys.
Aristides Aquino Nunez.
What is it? Aristides Aquino. Yeah, Aquino. Yeah, that's anyway. You know who I was talking about.
Yeah, I just want to throw it out there.
But no. So like I look at this stuff and I'm like, all right, we're watching guys like Daniel Palencia and everybody's excited about Pete Crow Armstrong and everything. But these are the same people who are saying, don't get rid of Stroman, don't get rid of Bellinger. I'm like, how do you think we got Daniel Palencia and Owen Casey and like all the guys who you're excited about now came through trades that y'all same people didn't want us to make 2-3 years ago. So hold up a little bit. And then the other thing is too, I look at so the Mariners, when they got Luis Castillo, they ended up extending him after this trade was made, but it was a similar. That's the closest thing I can get to a comp for Marcus Stroman is Luis Castillo to the Reds, to the Mariners from the Reds. The Reds got Noelvi Marte and Edwin Arroyo. They were the number 1 and number 3 prospects for for the Mariners at that point. I'm going to pull them up here in just a second. They also got Levi Stout, who was the number 5 Marlins prospect, and then Andrew Moore, who's unranked at the time. But let's see what the Reds. So there is Noelvi Marte right there, number 2 overall in the Reds system, right behind Ellie De La Cruz, who we were just talking about. Okay. Edwin Arroyo, number 3, right there behind him. Okay. And then what was the other one? Levi Stout. Let's see where Levi Stout, number 12 in the Reds system. So 3 out of their top 12 and 2 out of their top 3 prospects are guys who they got at the deadline last year when they traded Luis Castillo to the Mariners. This is what I'm talking about.
I think it was worth it.
Yeah, you think? So, and we haven't seen these guys play at the major league level. So, I mean, they could flop. It could happen. And Ellie De La Cruz could stop being amazing. But he's 6'5", 200 pounds, and he's like raw, like athleticism and talent, and has really good power skills and bat to ball skills. I'm just hoping that somewhere like with Kevin Moss, like with Jerome Walton and so many of these guys, that they find the holes in his swing where you can find ways to pitch to him and he doesn't tear your face off. And he's come back down to earth a little bit recently, but he's still a stud. But here we are. We're at the halfway point in the 2023 season and looking forward to what we hope will be a really fun 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, right? We're looking deep into the future for where this stuff is coming from. And I think a combination of the youth that is already really exciting in the Cubs system with some freed up money to spend in this offseason coming up makes it to where I'm willing to sacrifice maybe some of that steadiness that you would get from having these veterans stick around this year for giving some of those young guys a shot this year and seeing what they can do, because they could still, like you said, They could still
me.
surprise us and somehow make the playoffs, right? I doubt it. But I doubt that we make the playoffs even if the veterans stay around. So there's no
Right. No,
difference there to
but I
me.
would love to see like a 2015 replay of just like,
Yeah,
hey,
this isn't
no, but I
2015.
mean, I'm saying, what if these new guys were to just be like, hey, look, check this out, and we end up taking the lead back in the division and probably flopping in the first round immediately, like we did with the Mets, except that was the second round.
The difference is the 2015 team, Javi Baez came into his own that year. And really, if you look at it, he was still kind of playing a reserve role because Starlin Castro was the starting shortstop and Addison Russell was actually playing second base. And it wasn't until Addison Russell got hurt in the playoffs and they had to let Javi Baez play in his spot. Oh my gosh, Harry Carey glasses. But no, so Javi Baez though was like a top 10 pick. Kyle Schwarber was a top 10 pick. Chris Bryant was the number 2 overall. Like that was a different group of guys. Addison Russell was another. I think he was like a top 5 pick when the A's drafted him. So like you had the youth movement that year was, I think, more like what next year it looks like for the Cubs, where Pete Crow Armstrong is finally ready and Kevin Alcantara is finally ready. You start to see some of these guys really start to burst onto the scene. They're still they need some stuff at the in some of their infield spots, but the middle infield is pretty well shored up for the next few years with Dansby and Nico Horner, and even honestly, like even look at Nick Madrigal as a platoon piece, or not platoon piece, but a utility piece. So yeah, it's I think the 2015 vibe. This is more the 2014 vibe to me. This team, but it's kind of that hybrid because you already have some stuff there. But if you remember, the 2015 team was like the fulfillment of what 2014 started to promise. Jake Arrieta started to do similar to like Justin Steele, where it's like, oh, okay, this guy could be a Cy Young contender next year. I don't think he's going to be a Cy Young contender this year, but Justin Steele could legit be one. And then they went, Steele? Well, hang on. Let me finish. Hang on. So they had Jake Arrieta in 2014 pitched to like a 2.50 ERA to where he was one of the favorites to win the Cy Young in 2015 preseason. What did the Cubs do in that 2015 offseason? They went and got John Lester. Signed him to a 7-year deal.
You sent me the magazine cover of like the Cubs World Series odds went from like, I don't know, none to, I don't remember what. From legit, none to like really good chance.
Yeah, like 10-1 or something like that. Yeah. So that's anyway. So what were you going to say? Because I wanted to finish that point about like they did that year is they went
to know. Because Steele, how long have we had Steele?
Like last year was his rookie year. Let me see what his contract status is. But I mean, he's going to be around for a while. He is. Justin Steele he has 1.1 years of service time, and he is. I got to see what his contract status is, but I think he's got arbitration through his arbitration starts in 2025 and he's not a free agent until 2028.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, he's gonna be around a while. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like you
so
got, and then Jameson Taillon is in that same
some pitching, so you grab Ohtani and you get both.
Yep. And then you need like some bullpen like closer type material, unless you think Adbert Alzolay can hold that roll down, and then you just go get some other high leverage guys to fill in the back end, and maybe they compete with him for the closer spot. But I think from what I've seen from him, with him and Daniel Palencia, like that's two guys who I think have like real closer or late inning, high leverage type stuff. Alzolay has that dog in him, and Palencia does too, I think, where I think if you put them into a competition for the closer spot, what you're going to end up with is two really, really good back end guys. Alzolay, I don't know. He just seems like give him the most difficult situation, and he's like, thank you. Let me go dominate this. It's just he seems to embrace that. Now that he's figured out how to get lefties out, it's even better.
I looking back over the history of the Cubs, I mean, there are a lot of pieces that are involved, but I think that the closer position has been vital to them being successful. And whenever you think of Wade Davis, and whenever you think of, what was the dude's name that we lost in like mid-season because he tweaked his back, like tying his shoes or something?
Brandon Morrow.
God, I was like, what? We just lost our closer. Are you kidding me? He was
he was nails.
Amazing.
Yeah, he was doing really well.
Like you get Chapman, you get Wade Davis, you get Morrow. I mean, those kinds of trades, those kinds of pieces have been really for me, from what I've seen, like the game changer, the difference between losing those 1-run games and winning those 1-run games. And I know what you're saying, we need some more pop and everything like that, but I haven't been a big fan of the times when the Cubs were trying to pull everything over the fence. And I like the contact baseball, but I'm okay with throwing in some
you got to
I don't want the whole team. I don't want the whole team trying to hit a home run. Every
but you got to have.
Give me a cleanup guy. Give me something that can put some numbers on the board.
Look, I'm just going to give you the numbers. Just for right now. I think
Wisdom was competing for first place in the home run race at the beginning of the season.
Right, but he strikes out too much, and you're getting yourself in trouble when you're having to rely on a guy who bats. I mean, I think he's hitting like 180 right now. You can't have that be your foundation. So yeah, Christopher Morel with 15 homers, Wisdom with 14, Swanson with 10, Bellinger with 9. I'm just saying, like, so if you take Christopher Morel and Patrick Wisdom and combine them together, and you're still behind Shohei Ohtani by 3 home runs. And oh, by the way, Shohei Ohtani is going to bat 300 also, and he's also going to like be your number 1 or number 2 starter. So like, I'm just saying, like, it's when you're relying on, Dansby Swanson and his 10 home runs, Bellinger and his 9, Yan Gomes with 8. Like, the fact that Yan Gomes is the 5th home run leader for the Cubs should tell you everything you need to know about how much thump this team has in the lineup. And I'm not saying you have to go replace everybody with people with thump. They need to get more thump out of the guys they already have. Seiya Suzuki's got to hit for more power. He's got to fulfill the role that they signed him to that big contract for. Ian Happ, it would be nice if he hit for a little bit more pop like he has in the past. He should be a 20 homer guy. But you can't, I don't want Nico Horner, feeling like he's got to do that. And I don't want Dansby Swanson I want Dansby Swanson's power to just come organically because he gets the right pitch at the right time.
Right.
Yeah. But he doesn't need to be your 4 or 5. He needs to be like your 2, 3, maybe your 6, somewhere in that range. I want that 4 or 5 to be and I really honestly don't even want Christopher Morel to be relied on to be that guy in the lineup. I want his power to come from like the 7 spot as like a you can't get through this lineup kind of guy.
Yeah.
You really extend, if you remember back when the Cubs had their best team in 2016, it was Dexter Fowler at the top hitting 15 home runs. Okay. Then you had Ben Zobrist, who was like a 10, 15 home run guy, but who hit for great average, walked a lot, just really good on base guy. And then it was
that hurt
pick your
too
poison, Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, Schwarber. Okay, you get through.
Like you might get through one or two of them, but one of them is going to eat your lunch.
And then Addison Russell, at batting 7th or 8th. And this is when the pitcher was still batting. And then you had like either Miguel Montero or Wilson Contreras as like the 8th hitter.
All right. So other than Ohtani, who are you looking at?
I'm not really looking at anybody else yet. But there's a lot of stuff coming off the board this year. Some of it is you're going to have some older guys who I think the reason why I like Ohtani is because there's so much more longevity in him. Now, yeah, he could get hurt. He could like not be able to pitch anymore in 3 years. I don't know. But you never know that about anybody. And I feel pretty confident that his bat is going to be around for a while. And even if he just becomes a $50 million DH. Yeah.
Okay.
So even if he just becomes a $50 million DH, the other thing that I've told people is like, look, yeah, I get it. Like he might not be pitching for the Cubs for that whole 12 years. Duh. Like I understand that that's a very real possibility. However, by the time, if you look at Mike Trout's contract, he's making $40 some odd million a year as just a center fielder. He's not pitching. And he's not as good as Ohtani. I love the dude, but he's not as good. He's not the best player on his own team. And so like if I get 5 years, maybe 6 out of Ohtani as a decent to frontline starting pitcher, but I get him mashing as my DH for the whole 12, that $50 million come 2030 is going to look like nothing. They're going to be paying shortstops $55 million a year by that point. What?
Can you put your DH anywhere you want in the lineup, or does it have to be in the? Okay.
Yeah. Why would you? Yeah.
I'm just asking.
You can bat him first. You can bat him 4th. You can bat him 9th. It doesn't. It's that they have like Salvador Perez for the Royals. Sometimes when he's not catching, they'll just put him at DH, but he doesn't bat. He doesn't necessarily always bat in the middle of the lineup. But yeah, it's But I mean, there's a lot of starting pitching, hitting the market this offseason. And look, here's the other part that's crazy about this. You could trade Marcus Stroman and then re-sign him anyway. The Yankees did that with Aroldis Chapman. They traded Aroldis Chapman to us.
Which is what happened.
Yeah, they got Adam Warren and Gleyber Torres. And then they went back and bought Aroldis Chapman in the offseason and signed him to like a 5-year deal. Now, it didn't work out for him very well. But, that stuff is available. And I will say this, back to what you're saying about the closer thing. I kind of like the fact that the Cubs haven't, last year notwithstanding, because I think last year they were still trying to see if they could make something happen. And David Robertson wasn't that expensive. But you go back to like the Craig Kimbrell, that was like, okay, you have everything else. Now just go get this closer. And they didn't get him until June, I think, that year in 2019. They signed him in June. Like he hadn't pitched the whole season up to that point. He was still a free agent the whole summer. And then they signed him late. And he struggled a little bit at first. And then he finally started to get it together. And then by 2021, he was like lights out. Unfortunately, it was a little too late. If he had done that when he came over in 2019, the Cubs might have hung another banner in 2019 because that was a really good team. But typically, the biggest waste you can have on a roster is a really good closer on a really bad team or on a team that isn't, World Series worthy.
So you're saying that's the last piece you plug in.
That's the last
you get
piece,
everything else going. Yeah. And then whenever that's what they did. They were like, okay, we're going to make a run, get a roll this. Okay,
they rode Hector Rondon. Yeah, they rode Hector Rondon all 2015 and the first half of 2016. They hardly used their bull, and that was again back to what I was saying about the thump in the lineup. How did the Cubs do in 1-run games in the first half of 2016? Nobody knows because they boat raced everybody. They were blowing people out. It was the least used bullpen in baseball. Like Hector Rondon probably had like 15 saves in the first half, and the team won 60 games in the first half. So like, but then as you get closer to the playoffs, and it's like, okay, what's the one thing that could really ruin this? Not finishing games, close games in the playoffs, where you're not getting to go against the Pirates' fifth pitcher.
Right.
You're going against Clayton Kershaw and Corey Kluber, and so now you're going to be in a tight game in the ninth inning. Who's the one guy you can go get that's going to really slam the door? And it was Andrew Miller and Aroldis Chapman. The Indians got Andrew Miller, and we got Aroldis Chapman, and the rest is history. Andrew Miller gave up a bunch in Game 7, and Aroldis Chapman did too, but we still won because the other guy, the unsung hero in that whole thing that we got close to the deadline via trade, was Mike Montgomery for Dan Vogelback. So good old Monty. Yeah.
Gosh.
So anyway, that's my.
I'd like to thank the Cubs for so many good memories, in spite of so many years of anguish and frustrated hopes. Right. I think the last 10 years, 9 years have really been great.
It's been a lot of fun.
Just really fun baseball. A lot of names out there, a lot of good memories. Every game, there's so many games that they were emblematic, that even if it didn't even matter in the outcome of the season, it was just like just winning that game, like just beating the Brewers the way that we did recently. That was just like,
that was,
I don't even care what happened.
It was so frustrating. It was so frustrating, the loss before that, but beating Devin Williams the way that they did, and then having that the game with Palencia, getting coming out there and runner on second to start the inning, and getting out of it with back-to-back double plays to end the inning. One on throw a guy out at the plate, and then throw the guy out at second. Throw the guy out at a plate on a single. But I'm saying, but you throw. So Ian Happ throws him out at the plate on the single, and then they throw the guy the hitter out trying to take second on the single. And then the next inning, they hit a fly ball to Ian Happ, and he hoses that guy at the plate too. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that stuff's really fun. It reminds me of, I don't know if you remember this game, but it was 15 or 16. I think it was 2015. It might have been 16, but you remember Travis Wood? He was like our fourth or fifth starter in 2015. That's how people forget how
I'm thinking of that exact game. They went 13 innings and he pitched.
They got the bases loaded.
That's the game.
With nobody
That's what
out.
I was thinking of.
They got the bases loaded with nobody out and got out of it, and then won the game in the 14th. Yeah, it was crazy.
That game. That's exact. When I said there are so many good memories.
Yeah,
that is the exact game that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That was the exact game I was thinking of.
Well, so Travis Wood was. So here's what's crazy. 2015, the Cubs won 97 games, and their starting rotation was Jake Arrieta, John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, Jason Hamill, and Travis Wood. Yeah. 2016, the starting rotation was Jake Arrieta, John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, John Lackey, and Jason Hamill. So you don't have to have studs top to bottom. You just have to have enough to to distance yourself from some teams when you don't have your best pitching, or to shut down another lineup when your lineup isn't getting it done. But you've got to be able to.
Series, didn't he?
Huh?
Wood threw the last pitch of the World Series, didn't he?
No, that was Monty.
Oh yeah,
Montgomery. Right. Yeah. No, but Travis Wood did catch a fly ball to help the Cubs beat the Giants in the playoffs. You remember when he like pinch hit or something? He was playing left field. He was playing left field in the playoffs. Yeah, he was playing left field in the playoffs. They hit one to the wall and he caught it and smashed it into the ivy.
Caught it and smashed into the wall.
So like it's shout out to Joe Madden. You got to do what you got to do. And listen.
FYI, I got an ivy wall to be able to have behind me for this podcast, and I finished my other interview like 15 minutes late, so I had no way to get there. But I had an ivy wall plan and my setup ready to go. So we'll get that next time.
It's all good. Yeah, next time. But we can at least leave with this. Whether the Cubs make the playoffs or not is almost immaterial at this point, because we know that what we're really setting up for is what the next 5 years are going to look like. But what we can take solace in while we watch the Cubs struggle to stay around the 500 mark is that the Cardinals are they're struggling to get within 5 games of the Cubs. They are 14 games under 500 right now, and word is they're basically fire sailing. They're going to get rid of like half of their starting rotation and Jordan Hicks, and it's so look, it could be worse. We could be Cardinals fans, So we would be insufferable assholes, and we would also have a shitty team to root for.
2 weeks ago, I think we were 1 game behind 500 or 2 games.
Yeah.
That was a promising moment, but it was after I think we won 12 out of 13 or something ridiculous like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, that's great. That's awesome. But we don't need to, I don't know. We don't need to fret about that. I love getting as close to 500 as possible just to not feel like crap. Mostly for the morale of the team and everything like that, just to feel like the promise is coming. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that it's better to bet on the future and to not throw away what the stuff that you can keep. But sell, buy low, sell high.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's always a good strategy. I think there's a lot of promise, and I look forward to seeing. I'm going to watch the whole season anyway. I love watching them play.
There's a lot to.
I'm really hopeful to see what might happen in the trades and in the off season.
Yeah, there's a lot to watch for when you go to this list again. Not this one, but this one.
Yeah, definitely not that one.
Not that one.
There's a lot to hope for on that one too. If you want to go ahead and hope for the Reds this season, you'll have a lot to hope for.
I'm glad you said that, because I was actually thinking about it before we came on. Like, there's a part of me, as much as I can't stand him, because he's been such a pain in the neck for the last 10 years. I kind of wouldn't hate it if the Reds won one with Joey Votto, because like he has really suffered through some really bad Reds teams, and he's a good guy. Like I have tremendous amount of respect for the dude. Like he like gives baseballs to the opposing team's fans and stuff, and like he's like talking and he like cuts up with them and like makes jokes. Like he's just a dude's dude.
So good.
He's so good. You can't not respect his quality of play. He's
the frustrated like star on the crappy
team. Right. So let's look at these guys like this. Pete Crow Armstrong, Cade Horton, who like came out of nowhere, and just really, and that the Cubs I think did something with this draft this past week where they went and got Matt Shaw with their first pick at number 13, shortstop out of I think Maryland, but they went and got Jackson Williams, a pitcher from Arkansas. Missed this whole year with Tommy John surgery, but like they see some stuff similar to what they saw with Cade Horton, where the numbers for the whole season didn't look that good, but his like latter part of his last year before he got hurt, the stuff that he started to do with his slider, and he's, a mid to upper 90s fastball type guy. So there's some promise with some of these guys that they've drafted, but then you also just look at the guys who are already on in the farm system. Pete Crow Armstrong is the center fielder of the future. He's electric. He's going to win Gold Gloves. He's going to hit triples, steal bases, may even have a little bit of pop, but he's going to be a doubles, triples guy, and maybe a 10 to 15 home run guy too. But he's going to be elite defensively and speed wise. Cade Horton is going to be a potential stud starting pitcher. Ben Brown is really pitching well, was pitching great at AA, got the call up to AAA, and he took a little bit of a step back, but he started to find his way at the AAA level as well. Kevin Alcantara is just still hitting bombs. Yeah, Jordan Wicks is going to be another guy who I think he's a stud waiting. He's probably going to be getting the call up this year in September, if I had to guess. And so he's another one that we didn't even talk about him, but like, what if you get rid of Smiley and Hendricks and Stroman? Well, you go to these guys. I don't know about Cade Horton. He's probably a couple of years away. But Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks, absolutely. And then you still have Hayden Wisniewski and Javier Assad, and you've got Adrian Sampson, like as guys who could fill in and plug some of those gaps. But then you keep going down, and like, it's so crazy that Brennan Davis, who was like one of the Cubs' top prospects, has dropped all the way to number 7 on this list because some of the guys that they've gotten recently have been so good and have surpassed him. And there's so much promise on here. We already talked about Canario, Owen Casey. I think Casey is probably a little closer. Triantos, Canario, they're probably a few years away. They're really young. Especially Triantos. He's he's 20. He's 20 years old. But Daniel Palencia already pitching at the major league level, already getting it done. DJ Hertz is another guy who I think could be quickly coming up. Oh, Caleb Killian's another guy who could fill one of those starting spots. There's tons of promise. Ed Howard is another one. This dude used to be like in the top 10, maybe even top 5 on the Cubs prospect list. He's down at number 22 now. He's only 21 years old, but that just shows you how much the Cubs have added to that system. And one of the things that we don't talk about a lot when we talk about making these trades is that it's not just about having all these guys so that they can become the future of your club. It's the more bulk you have of studs in your minor league system, the more you are equipped to go trade for an Aroldis Chapman, because you can let go Gleyber Torres.
Right.
Why did they let go of Gleyber Torres? Because when they made that trade, Addison Russell and Javier Baez were both blocking him at shortstop and second base at the major league level. So what good did it do you to hang on to him? Now, granted, he's a monster. He's been great for the Yankees, but the Cubs got a ring. The Yankees don't. So was it worth it? In my opinion, every penny.
I agree. And what I'm looking at with all these right-handed and left-handed pitchers that you're talking about bringing up, some of them have already come up. I mean, it's like what you said about Kimbrough after not having pitched for so long, and then coming in and doing his thing, and then kind of getting his jive going on. I love the idea of getting to see some of these guys kind of. Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to be superstars right when they come up, but I'd love having them have half a season or a third of a season to be able to kind of wet their chops. I don't even know what the heck you call it anymore. I've been in Mexico for so long, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, to get their feet wet and just kind of like get kind of a little taste of it so that they know what it's like.
And have us feeling comfortable with knowing where to put them and what to do with them starting next season. I mean, I love that. And that's still even just thinking about getting rid of the players that we have and making space for these guys. We're still not even talking about putting somebody new in there and bringing new people on for what we're selling. So I think you do all that and you get some blockbuster trade. I mean, I don't know, this Ohtani thing, you've already got me hardcore on that. Right? Yeah, I'm excited about that. I don't know how realistic it is. I don't know if it's going to be a bidding thing where there's going to be a bunch of teams that are thinking.
Oh no, it absolutely is. Yeah, he's going to get some heavy push from the Yankees and the Giants. Yeah, all the The Dodgers are gonna, I'm sure, like throw money at him and everything. It's gonna be the usual suspects who just buy their way to still not winning championships every year. You know, those teams. The Mets are gonna be in on him, I'm sure, or something. You know, it's. But the thing is, here's the other thing that's cool. Like you got to see the Padres have already kind of shot their wad. They've spent so much money the last several off seasons that they like it's I don't know how much more dry powder they even have, you know. And then the Mets, they spent a crap ton of money too. And you go through like, you know, the Phillies, same thing. The Giants, maybe not so much. They may be a little better position, but
So
the
the Cubs
Cubs
might have
haven't.
more to negotiate with.
Yeah, they have more to spend. It's just going to come down to money and then also the sales pitch. The Cubs made a really good sales pitch when they tried to get Ohtani to come before he signed with the Angels. I think he probably regrets that. He said earlier this week that you know he's not like he's not enjoying himself. He said it sucks to lose. You know, like it doing, you know, having the money and having the whatever, you know, in Anaheim where he's a little closer to some of the Asian culture and everything because there's more because it's a Pacific Ocean, you know, state. California is going to have more of that vibe where you feel a little bit more at home, whether you're Korean, Japanese, Chinese, whatever. There's more of that Asian vibe up the Pacific coast than there is, you know, in Chicago,
South
you know,
Dakota.
yeah, right. So, but then, you know, you have the Cubs have Seiya Suzuki already, and so you've got some, you know, there's a bit of salesmanship that can come from just having those guys help to recruit for you. So
just let them sit down and drink a beer together and see what happens.
Right. But yeah, I'm excited about it, and even, you know, are they going to sign Shohei Ohtani? I don't know. Is it likely? Maybe not, but I think it's
possible.
As possible as it's ever been. Probably more possible than it was the first time around. Even though they threw a roughly the same amount of money at him that the Angels did, he had a different calculus in his head. Wanted to go play with Mike Trout and yada yada. But I think this is the Cubs front office's chance to really put their stamp on something. I think they did a little bit of that with the Dansby Swanson signing. I think the Jameson Taillon thing was like here's a piece. We can get him for $17 million a year. That's pretty decent for a starting pitcher who could be like your number 2, 3, whatever. You know, he needs to be your 2, or at least your 3 for that kind of money. But, you know, we can do this. Well, now you've got Taillon and Steele locked in for the foreseeable future. You go get Shohei Ohtani, and then you can maybe go get a cheap. Maybe you hang on to Drew Smyly. Maybe you hang on to Kyle Hendricks. I'm not saying you have to trade all of these guys, but I'm taking whatever. If it's me, if I'm in the front office, I'm taking whatever I can get for Marcus Stroman. I'm gonna play it, you know, close to the vest and like, oh, we don't really want to trade him. You know, we're hoping we can get him to come back on that $25 million deal next year, or whatever. Same with Cody Bellinger, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, lip service to that BS. But I'm trying to get whatever I can get for Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman because I don't think they're coming back next year. I think there's a less than 5% chance that either one of them comes back next year. And I'm going to try to get what I can for Yan Gomes. He's a veteran, very good pitch framer, very good pitching staff handler, and he's hitting the ball really well as a catcher. That's a valuable piece for a team that's trying to make a playoff run. That may be the one piece that they need. Yeah. And I'm not saying you're going to go get their top prospect, but if you can get one of their top 10 or 15 prospects, okay, it's better than nothing because you will get nothing for him when he opts out of his contract after this year.
Right.
And same thing with Bellinger and Stroman. So, but then you get to Smyly and Hendricks, Fulmer and Mancini. I think Fulmer and Mancini, the problem you're going to have there is you're not going to get much offered for them because they're not going to command that much. With Smyly and Hendricks, you could potentially hang on to Smyly for another couple of years, but he could also decide to opt out. It's kind of up in the air. I think there's a good chance he sticks around. I think he likes it in Chicago. It's like his second tour of duty with the Cubs. And Hendricks, I think you're likely to be able to hang on to him as well. You could probably sign him to like a 4 or 5 year extension to end his career as a Cub and do it for pretty cheap. I don't think he's going to command a whole lot on the free agent market, and you're probably not going to get a whole lot in the trade market from him either. So from either of those guys really, but I'm starting at Bellinger and Stroman, and then after that I'm dangling those guys out there. And out of those 7 guys I mentioned, if you trade 3 or 4 of them, that's a pretty successful selling deadline, for me. If you sell 6 of them, I'm like, holy cow, that's amazing. And if you only sell 1 or 2 of them, it's kind of what's expected. If you don't sell any of them, like we said, like that's the worst case scenario.
Right, you just lose them.
I don't even want to buy because I like unless it's like some little marginal around the edges guys where you trade your 28th and 38th best prospects for like a middle reliever or something, or maybe like a left-handed hitter who can fill in for say a Suzuki in right field or something. I don't even know. Like to me, no. I'm all in on selling.
I'm with you.
That's why the thumbnail says sell, sell, sell.
Well, I just want to thank David Ross for listening to this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's not him. We gotta get Carter Hawkins and Jed Hoyer. We gotta get those guys to buy in on this selling everything.
But we're gonna tag them on the whenever we upload.
You're always going to from those guys, you're always going to get the lip service at least and it'll never sound like lip service because it can't. It has to be convincing. But you think about it, like if you're trying to sell your house, the last thing you're going to do is be like, listen, I don't give a shit. I want to get out of this house. Like I'll take whatever I can get. Like, no, you're gonna be like, yeah, we don't really want to move. We're thinking about moving, but we just want to see, like, if somebody blows us away with a really good offer, we'll consider it. But we're kind of, we may sell, we may not. I don't know. Make an offer. Knock our socks off. Like that. You never want to go in negotiating with your pants down. So it's going to be an aggressive dangling of people, but with a kind of a hard line stance. Like, huh? No. What?
Yeah. 3 with the double on tongue.
Okay. My bad. All right. Yeah. So. Yeah, I don't have the pause button in here, but yeah, I don't mean to say pants down, dangling, and
in about a minute.
Yeah, what was it? Pants down, dangling, and what was the other one that I did?
The other one was the wide, but that was a little
back. Well, that's a gun reference.
It's okay.
That was not a sexual reference, but your mind is in the gutter, not mine.
Okay.
But no, so they're gonna go in with like, hey, look. Yeah, I'm willing to listen. What you got? Oh, no. We're gonna just try to see what we can do in the offseason to re-up with this guy. I'm not taking that deal. And you just keep pushing, and then at some point you're gonna come to the 11th hour and you got to make a choice, right? You got to shit or get off the pot. There's one that's an actual, like, real explicit reference to something that's doesn't have any other innuendo. Fish or cut bait. So, but yeah, there's going to come a point where the decision is going to have to be made, and either the offers are good enough and you grab them, or the offer is not good enough and you say, nah, you know what? We're going to go ahead and let this pass. I hope that's not what happens. I hope the offers are good enough.
I don't know. I don't understand, based on what you've told me, what it would mean for it not to be good enough. Because, I mean, you can feel like you're getting shortchanged, but shortchanged is even more if you get nothing. But at the same time, it's like you don't want to set a precedent of, well, if you hold out until the end, I'll give it to you for $50, because then they're going to know that about your system for the next 10 years, and they're going to wait it out.
There's that. It's also, I mean, like, look, we're talking about human beings here too. It's insulting to the player. Like if you trade Cody Bellinger for like a bag of garbage, that's, you know, like that's insulting on a human level. And then the rest of the clubhouse sees that too, and they're like, "Damn, man! Like we were homies," and they just like, they literally like let him go for nothing. You know, it says something about the rest of the team when you make a trade and you can make the case like, no, look at what we got. I know you hate seeing Cody go, but look what we got for him. This is why we had to make this deal.
You justify it.
We couldn't pass it up. Yeah, you can justify it. So anyway, that's all I got.
That's all I got too, man. I'm ready to rumble.
Right.
I really enjoyed this. Thanks again for the invitation. I think this is only my second or third time I got to hang here with you, but I love it. And thanks to all the viewers who are out there following this. And and I'll throw out, if I can, I'll throw out a little commercial. I just finished writing my first novel about 3 days ago. So it'll be out on the market pretty soon. It's going to be called Daring to be Different. So if anybody's interested, keep an eye out in the next few months, and you'll see it out there on Amazon, on Kindle.
There you go. Yeah, you can go ahead and sell your wares here. That's fine. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us. This has been the Wrigleyville South podcast, and we're hoping we are hardcore Cubs fans, but we are realistic Cubs fans. We want what's best for the ultimate future, and we want as many World Series rings as we can get. And in our humble opinion, flailing away for a chance to barely make the playoffs and then probably get bounced in the first round is not worth sacrificing future rings. We want rings. We want lots of them. So let's go. Let's get it. Thank y'all for joining us. Peace.